Hi everyone. Today someone was over at my home. In their extended family, someone had a severe accident and has become paralyzed. This afternoon I put together a short list of things for the family to focus on and what will be helpful to this person at the beginning of their journey. This is the type of list it would have been helpful for me to have had several years ago. I want to go through the list of things I've talked about and explain them each to you. I am using notes from the email that I wrote this afternoon. Please mind me if I'm looking down periodically to make sure I cover all the topics. So the first item is getting finances under control. And to be candid with you, without a short-term or long-term disability covered by the workplace, you're going to quickly find that many of the social assistance benefits only provide for the bare essentials. That is, a place to live and food for the stomach. Nothing more. It's really hard when you're suddenly in a wheelchair. There are so many environments that just are not friendly. And it's going to take some concerted effort to either get a house accessible, like this is the exit to my home, getting it so that a wheelchair can exit that door, or finding a suitable apartment. So if someone is in the hospital, one of the tasks that the family can be doing is either deciding upon a renovation to get the home where that person lives accessible with a ramp, or deciding on an alternative arrangement for housing. This is going to be a conversation between the person who's had the accident, people that they've authorized to act on their behalf, and the healthcare team that's taking care of them at the moment. There are certain advantages to living in a retirement community or nursing home. If the person's mental acuity is intact and it's strictly a physical disability like what I deal with, I'm going to highly suggest to you that you do your best in trying to assess if it's possible to move back home so that the enrichment activities can take place that aren't necessarily going to happen in a retirement community or nursing home setting. Meaning, you're not as likely to be able to tinker with things at home. You would still be able to do artwork or have a computer set up there, but the environment that you'd be living within is going to be far more sedated than the enrichment you can have in a home environment. This isn't to say that a period of time living in a nursing home wouldn't be helpful, and it may take that step or a rehab hospital to gain the strength and get the systems in place to be able to return back home. But for me, I have found it so rewarding living here, and virtually all the doctors and healthcare professionals that look over my care would far rather me living here than in a nursing home because of my functional skill set and my motivation to live life. I'm going to get off topic for a minute. When you've had an accident or you've had a debilitating disease like myself, taking care of the mental health becomes the most important. And this is why it's worth the effort getting the person back in an environment where they're going to be able to thrive. It takes several months to get the systems in place to just function in day-to-day life and basically reach a baseline. Because when the accident happens, you're like 5 steps behind. But once you get to here, you can start figuring out what else you're going to do with your time and start to feel like you're actually living again. It's something I want to ask you to think about and talk over with the person that's going through it, because it's not your decision to make. It needs to involve the person that's living this out. So I would suggest to you, as sort of point number 1, that you find out what the social assistance available is so that you can get an application in as soon as possible and start establishing some cash flow. Part of this is finding out if there are any secondary subsidies available. So I'll give you an example. Here where I live in Ontario, Canada, there's a low-income electricity subsidy available. And it's something that I'm eligible for. The disability was one application form. This electricity subsidy was separate. You didn't automatically get one because you got the other. So you need to be asking the social workers that are part of your community what's available and what are the doors that I go knocking on to ask for help, because they're going to have that local knowledge that you need to tap into. And a social worker is going to also be extremely helpful in any portion of a disability application that the patient needs to fill out. The reason is that they can start getting a sense of wording that leads to an approval, whereas requiring further documentation if the words are a little bit different. And I'm sorry to say it, but I've seen this happen. So use a social worker. If you're in the hospital and it's already available to you, make use of that resource and let the person also know what's actually going on. Because if you're struggling, part of their job is making sure that you get the coordinated support you need. Part of that's going to be family and friends, and then there's going to be a part where maybe a professional help is needed as either a sounding board or just to help you adjust with life and give you things to think through as you get established in your new life. Okay, there's no shame in it. I've done this for myself different times. Sometimes it's hard to tell if you're making the right decision or not. And having someone neutral that doesn't have any emotional involvement in the situation provides objective feedback. And there's times when this is priceless. Make sure that either if you're watching this for yourself or that it's a family member watching to gain knowledge, that the person that's going through this isn't needlessly suffering while they work through their journey and gain their new life established. There are a few other items that are going to need to be considered if the person's going to come back to living at home. So let me ask you this question. What do you do in your day-to-day life? I expect some of the answers you're going to come up with is having a meal, personal hygiene, bowel and bladder, and house cleaning. The same types of things still need to happen for the person that's either partially paralyzed or has lost some of their mobility. The good news is that there's all kinds of tools available that can make it happen much easier than 20 years ago. So someone that is paralyzed, let's say from the belly button down, there's something called a Hoyer lift. Hoyer, Hoyer. It's equal to a crane. This is the tool that lifts a person up and then would bring them to the shower, to the toilet, etc. And that's how they do transfers if you can't do it yourself. There's other options too. There's crutches, canes, walkers. I mean, there's even walking sticks if the person's comfortable with it and it's appropriate. A Hoyer lift becomes sort of the I need the most support possible option. For personal hygiene, my suggestion to you is trying to make life as normal as it possibly can be. And so, if you think back before an accident, I happen to have enjoyed warm showers or getting in the tub and just having that extra time to relax. I think it's a morale booster as long as it's practical to be able to get into the shower. So there's these things called shower chairs. They kind of have a plastic coating and then 4 legs, and a person sits on them when they're showering, and they use a handheld shower head and kind of position over their head, chest, groin, and legs, and you can still shower in a shower if that's what the person wants. Sometimes this is going to require partial assistance. For those who are modest, there are people that will shower in their bathing suits, and then they'll pull the curtain so the home care worker or family member's not in there and wash their groin and genitals. It depends on the functionality. The rule of thumb is if your hands have the dexterity to wash your genitals, you do it yourself. Help is typically only given if it's physically not possible for you to do this yourself. The other key item, or 2 key items for at home, one's for an electric bed, the same style that a hospital has. You know, it's got the tilting option that will make repositioning easier as you're going through a healthcare process, or if this is long term. And that's what I have here in my home, and it's been worth every last dollar of it. An over-the-bed table is also so helpful. So let's say you had an outing yesterday. You're feeling tired, and it would just be easier for you to have some quiet time in bed. Having an over-the-bed table will help you have your meals. You could do some crosswords or puzzles there. It's just going to facilitate lots of enhancement activities besides the essentials of day-to-day life. You know, if you're not able to get to the shower, that over-the-bed table holds the basin of water while you wash yourself, as well as brushing your teeth and spitting into the basin. Another item, especially if you're a man, the table can hold the urinal as well if it's going to be hard getting to a toilet. Just while we're on that topic, I'm not circumcised, and there's been no problem with my foreskin in using a urinal. You just maintain normal hygiene, and it's a non-issue. The next item I want to talk about are either wheelchairs or scooters. So wheelchairs tend to be given to people who require mobility in their home environment. Scooters, on the other hand, tend to be for people who can get around the house but need help when they leave. The challenge of this is there's scooters that tend to sort of tip over and they don't have access to public transit systems because tipping would cause harm and hurt the person. I would suggest you make an inquire early on about a wheelchair. Your point of contact for this is an occupational therapist. Why I bring this up is again to promote independence. So even if your hands don't work, there's wheelchairs that can be controlled with a little tube, and certain blowing sequences control direction and speed, and it gives independence and it gives dignity back in the person's life that's going through this. There's all kinds of things that go along with this. Automated doors become very helpful. Simply making sure that the wheelchair can exit the house because the door's wide enough. Like this is a 36-inch door right here, and you really need a 36-inch door to have the space to get through easily. A lot of these applications take time. If there's not funding available for a wheelchair, don't immediately panic. There's often people that donate their wheelchairs when they're not yet worn out. There's different charities and not-for-profits that can make a wheelchair available. It's going to be up to you and your healthcare team to tap into this local knowledge. You could search online. You could also be talking to an occupational therapist. A good mobility store will do a referral if they can't serve you. So if a financial barrier exists, then they could help direct you to a local charity perhaps. Understand that wheelchairs are like vehicles. They take time and money to maintain. It's something you need to budget for, the same as you would budget for retirement. I want to encourage you to make sure that you plan ahead so that it's not a letdown. Because once the wheelchair becomes a tool the person gets comfortable with, when it breaks, it's like pulling the rug out from underneath them in their life. I also want to share with you that maintaining one is not hard. It's the same type of idea as riding an electric bike. There's only a handful of tools that are needed, and if money's tight in the family, it's easy enough to find bearings online and batteries at a big box store. Many of the wheelchairs take the same battery a boat uses. And as long as you follow the diagrams and you're really careful and you have confidence in what you're doing, you can do it yourself. You just need a handful of tools. So YouTube's excellent about finding these videos about how to change bearings, hooking up batteries, changing the motor brushes, but there's only a handful of things that goes wrong with wheelchairs most of the time. So it's not like you would need to hire and pay a high hourly rate every single time it needs maintenance if your family's really struggling. I just mentioned that so it's planned for and that it's sort of peace of mind. Another concern you're going to run into is the limited community hour care that's available. And this gets to be a really tricky situation. As a caregiver, you don't want to wear yourself out because then you're not helpful to the person who needs you. At the other extreme, you need to try to be doing what's best for the person who's going through this. So you need to be able to be honest when you need a break. And perhaps part of the plan is 1 week every 3 months they spend it in a retirement community in a respite care bed, just to give you some downtime. It's a thought. It doesn't have to be all or none. You can hire private care for roughly half the price of going through an agency, but it's up to you to do the screening and criminal record check. That half that price takes away the safety net going through an agency allows. I'm going to also share the saying with you. It takes, remember back when you'll have heard it takes a child to raise, or a community to raise a child. There are several people that help me in practical ways that I wouldn't be here if they couldn't give of themselves to do chores for me. Some of the things that are very hard for me is yard work. Someone came today and took the yard waste to the public works yard for disposal. Reaching for things that have fallen down is another item. Running the odd errand for me, something else I rely on people for. You need to pick your battles. You can find pharmacies that tend to deliver if you live within a populated area. There are grocery stores that will deliver either for a fee or if you're in a major city. Where we're going right now with the internet and online shopping, it's also plausible that you could get groceries delivered to your home. So again, it's questions to be asking. And maybe you make a list of your questions over a few week period and then go reconnect with the social worker instead of asking one question at a time. The key to this is going to be addressing any family conflict that exists so that then you can focus on the person's actual needs and not have the family in the way. Now, I realize that what I've said can be far more difficult to accomplish, but if your heart is focused on helping someone, maybe a misunderstanding that happened 10 years ago doesn't matter anymore. It just puts things into perspective when there's a crisis, okay? That's what I'm trying to get at. The final item that I want to touch on in this video is maintaining a healthy body weight. I bring this up because putting on weight is just going to astronomically complicate your healthcare treatment. You can control a healthy body weight by simply watching what you eat and having the correct size portions. You do not need exercise to lose weight. The catch is that it's a commitment to be honest and realistic about what goes in your mouth. And then having the self-control not to be eating extra. So a dietitian can help you through this process. I mean, there's even material available for low-income healthy eating. It's a matter of saying, I need this help so that you get it. When you're in the hospital, everyone's right there and able to offer the help. But when you're in that situation, you don't always know the questions that need to be asked. And that's why I'm posting this video online. I want to try to make your life a little bit easier. Now, there's lots I've not covered in this video. If there's other items that you'd like me to speak about, just let me know. I want to see you have the best quality of life that's possible. A lot of this journey goes one day at a time. There's an awful lot of monotony in the 1 days. The odd enrichment activity, going out and watching nature, going to a baseball stadium, or simply going to a park because that's what the person wants to do, is what will keep them thriving and engaged and not start to dwell or focus in on themselves, become overwhelmed, and then shut down. Remember that they're still a person and not an object. There's going to be some misunderstandings. You're going to need to have an open mind and let the person say what needs to be said. But it's a journey, and as long as your focus is right and you're committed, it is worth it in the long run, even if it seems overwhelming right now. Thanks so much for this time that you've spent with me today. Bye for now.